Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Teach, Sleep, Repeat. My name is Dylan.
And my name is Dylan.
And hello from the two Dylans. How are you doing, Hayden?
My name's Hayden, actually.
Oh, hi.
For all the new listeners. We've had lots of new listeners.
Yeah, really good. The last episode went down a treat. We should do serious stuff more often. I always remember someone just has mentioned how it's just slowly declined from the start of the very first episode about strikes, and then we did the episode. It was after the episode we did when Rory came, and it was just completely mad.
Yeah.
I was like, let's try and get a bit of a semblance of order. So last lesson. Oh,
you slipped into teacher mode then.
Right, last lesson, kids. We're looking at short multiplication. Okay, so everyone listening this, last episode, our best day 1 and day 2 have been released an episode. Yeah. So really,
we had 10 listeners.
We had 10. I think it was Rishi and the rest of his cabinet.
Up from one listener.
Yeah, from Gillian Keegan up to 10.
Yeah. And your family who send me t-shirts when I say stupid stuff.
They count for about 15, don't they? Also, love how you've not worn that t-shirt since you got it. Anyone who doesn't know, Hayden, it's right there, so you can grab it.
Yeah.
There is a t-shirt that my parents printed for him. Parents, if you're listening, he's not washed it once. He's not washed it. He's not worn it. It's just been sat there.
I was going to wear it today, but obviously I forgot. Wrong way. Yeah. There we are. If you look on the camera. Also, if you're not watching on the camera, I wonder if it sounds different. Because you might notice if you are watching that me and Dylan haven't got our usual microphone set up here. We've got new little pop shields. Look at us.
Yeah.
We feel really professional.
Yeah, isn't that very professional as we sit in your little tiny third red room?
Yeah. In our studio, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, studio.
Anyway,
yeah.
Dylan.
But I tell you what, very quickly on the studio note, you do have like sound protection things on your walls. I actually thought they were really small shelves at one point. But
these things, No.
Maybe we'll post a picture on the Instagram for anyone who can't see them.
Little Lego things you could put on there, I guess.
Yeah, little Lego miniature things.
Yeah, no, the boards behind me, they're just soundboards because it's very boxy in here. It echoes a lot.
And it is a studio, as you've been saying. But anyway, we had a really good response to our last episode. I'm here. I've honestly been spending the last 2 minutes stalling trying to remember what it was about, but I can't remember what it was called. What was it called?
You absolute fool. How could you forget what the last episode was about?
Workload reduction task force.
I stalled then so that you could remember because I forgot as well.
Yeah, anyway, went down a treat. We went through all the different things and just had a chat about how teacher workload, it's all a bit of a facade, isn't it? Workload until there's funding.
If you want to know more about it, check out last week's episode. It's a good one. It's a good one. We talked for a long time. It was extended bumper episode. Anyway, only one thing this week I want to talk about because we kind of introduced it last week. The whole.
Oh, you're going to tell me about your week?
Yeah,
I didn't ask.
Yeah, you did earlier.
Oh, okay.
You forgot about that. You did. Go back and listen, mate. You did.
Hayden, how's your week?
So, last week when we mentioned that your class had just made up this forfeit thing for me, we're losing this times tables battle, which I of course did. Well, we've since had the forfeit, and basically on Tuesday when I was on duty outside, oh man, your kids were so excited at the prospect of chasing me. I went outside and within 20 seconds I had 25 year 4s all crowding me. Some of them were just like grabbing my arm so I couldn't get away, and I'm like, oh, don't do that, get off me please. And they were like, right, we're going to give you 3 seconds. I just started counting. They're like, 3. And I was like, oh, I've got to run, haven't I? I've got to run. But I can't run too fast because if I pelt it and run into a kid, can you imagine?
No.
So I had to do that classic, like, I'm pretending I'm really old and can't run very fast. Like, oh, running. And they all caught me. Yeah. And then they all caught me and it was really sweet. So then once I was like, oh, this is annoying now. Because they wouldn't let go of me. I was like, right, well, let's get Mr. Price, shall we? They were like, yeah! I was like, let's all go to his window and do this. And we put our hands up to our noses and we all came to your window and you saw it.
My blinds were closed.
Yeah. Well, then, they obviously then didn't leave me alone again. They were like, let's chase you again. I was like, no, let's not. Let's not chase me again. Let's do a conga line. So I started a conga line and then all the other kids from the playground joined in. I had about 100 children in the end. And we went back to your classroom to walk past to all wave at you and you weren't there anymore. We just waved your empty classroom. Anyway, but the overall summary of this isn't it nice when the kids it's so stupid, this little thing we did. It's nothing. It was nothing to you. It was nothing to me. And I reckon it made some of those kids' days because they were just so buzzed about chasing their week.
I swear to you, every day in maths, they were like, is it Tuesday yet? Like, honestly, they were really cool to. And they were saying to me, you're going to chase them, aren't you? I was like, I've got a meeting at break.
Sat there on your desk.
I just wanted to do my marking and watch out the window. Yeah. But I did see the conga line. Hilarious. And then just I saw like year 5s and year 6s in the conga line.
Yeah, that was all there.
Everyone joined. So good.
It was really fun.
Like a 200 child conga line out on the playground. So good.
So that was kind of the highlight of my week.
Yeah. No, it was one of the highlights of mine actually.
Yeah.
I had a couple of things I wanted to talk about because it just really made me laugh.
Hang on, sorry. How was your week, Dylan?
Oh, thank you. I thought you were never going to ask. There was this one child that came up to me this week. It was so good. And she had like 7 or 8 pieces of paper in her hand. Like not in a pile, obviously all been crumpled up or folded and stuff. And she was like trying to walk along, and they were falling out. She was picking them up. She was like, oh God, Mr. Price. So she put them down on my desk and was trailing through them. Okay, trailing through all these papers, looking 1 minute, I can't find your one. And then she gave me a piece of paper. It said, best teacher ever, Mr. Price. Had a football, had something else. I think it was like a man with a beard, obviously. I was like, oh, best teacher ever. Nice. What's that in your hand? She had a pile of best teacher ever posters for every single teacher who teaches us. And then she even afterwards said, where can I give this to Mrs. Evans, who's my partner teacher? I was like, oh, why don't you wait and not show me the other best teacher ever one? And she was rifling through them. The PE teacher, the music teacher, the head teacher.
Me. Best teacher ever.
Best teacher ever with the 7 others who I've got on my list. Yeah. So that cracked me up. Also, I don't know if anyone else gets it who works in a school gets this. I'm sure you do. But it really made me stop and think. The amount of questions I get, right, when any kind of transition. So when they're coming in the morning, or they're coming from break time, or they're coming from lunch.
What are we doing?
It's one child after the other. One child after the other. Oh, no. Usually something you can kind of just bat off. Like, oh, I feel a bit poorly. Okay, have a drink, go and see how you feel. Oh, so-and-so said this on the playground. Oh, where's that so-and-so? Let's talk. You just talk about it quickly. And everything's part of the course. There's one thing the other day that a child said to me, and I actually replied to them something I've never really said before. Okay.
Okay.
So
I don't care. Dylan.
I said to them, okay, what do you want me to do about that? Like I was like,
oh, that's so sassy.
No, I know, but this is what they said, and this child can take it, so there was no issue there.
Yeah.
They come up to me and said, handed their book to me, they're reading, and just to show me, and as if I can solve this problem. So gave me their book and goes, I was reading it, but I've lost my page.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough.
I was like, okay.
You tried looking for it?
Yeah, she went, I can't find it, and was handing me the book. Oh, okay. What do you want? What do you want me? I don't know where you were. And she went, oh yeah. And then went back to her seat. Yeah. What do you want me to do? That's like up there when they finish their page and go, can I go to the next one? And I now say no. No. And they, oh, okay. Yeah. Most of the time, they'll just turn and laugh.
Yeah, obviously.
This girl this week went, okay.
Oh.
So I was like, oh, darling, of course you can. Go to your next page. What do you do every other time you finish a page? Go to the next one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Carry on. Has it ever been a problem?
Can you imagine wanting to do more work and we go, excuse me, that's not today's piece of A4 paper. Thank you very much.
That story is equivalent to me. So at our school, we do something called quizzing. Yeah. And the children read books, they quiz on it just to kind of show that they've understood it, really. And it's just when a kid comes up to you and says, oh, can you help me on this one? And it's like, unless I've read the book, which I almost definitely haven't because there's about 5,000 books in our library. I'm just go, oh, I haven't read the book, mate. I don't know. Why would I know the answer? I haven't got time to read the whole 215-page book.
Can you help me with this quiz? Not really.
Yeah, to be honest with you, it's one of the only things I absolutely, definitely am worse than you at because I haven't read the book and you have. So I definitely can't help you with it.
It's so funny.
I feel bad though because I'm like, no.
Yeah. It's just, we all know children ask useless questions and we're just used to batting them off. But that really caught me off guard. And I just didn't know what to say. It's like, okay, there is absolutely nothing I can do to help you with that.
You've had quite a funny week.
Yeah, no, it didn't finish there.
Done what else? What other funny stuff happened?
We did DT this week, design technology.
That's funny. That's
a good joke. Yeah. And we were doing fastening, so buttons, zips, all that kind of thing. We've done hinges previously. This feels like the next. I don't know why. Why do fastenings feel like they lead on from from hinges? I don't know, but it does feel like it does anyway. So we did hinges before Christmas. We're doing zips and buttons now. The children will be sewing a button onto a flannel. And we were doing a lesson all about different fasteners and the advantages and disadvantages and why you might use poppers for one thing, like a baby grow.
Okay. Yeah.
And why you might use buttons for something else and why a zip might be more beneficial on a coat, for example. All these different pros and cons. And we were going through each one and we were getting the children to talk to each other and say, okay, give me one advantage, one disadvantage, and some way you think we would use it. So for poppers, it was one advantage, very easy. Disadvantage, it doesn't completely close up the gap between the material. So you get holes, so that has to not be a problem. And where would you use it? We said a baby grow, because we're talking about roaring, and that all is closed pretty much, our poppers.
Have you got a baby of you?
Yeah, I do have a baby. I've never mentioned it. I showed someone 3 pictures of him this week, and it was the same picture to the same person every day. So have you seen this yet? And they were like, yep.
Saw it yesterday when I told you that I'd already seen it.
Yeah, lovely though, lovely. Anyway, this one girl, we were doing DT And I think we were on maybe on Velcro by this point. Another one.
Right.
So we're on Velcro and we were going around. Cool. Okay, so you've all chatted on your tables. Give me one advantage of Velcro. And someone was like, yeah, really easy to zip off. Really awesome. Yeah, like, cool. Yeah. Give me a disadvantage because Velcro seems dead easy. It's actually harder for children to sometimes think why Velcro would be bad.
Yeah, because Velcro is like the ultimate starter.
It's on everything.
Thing, isn't it?
Yeah, literally. It's so simple. But why would you not use it? And we basically ended up saying because you can have other fasteners that are more sturdy. Velcro is very easy to come off, so it's obviously not always suitable. Anyway, I said to this child, she put her hand up for a disadvantage. And I went, yes. And she went, I was just in a hall and I saw Mr. Stevens in his shorts and he looked really weird. Anyway, a disadvantage. And she carried, and honestly, I was like, and I just had to say to her, I was like, oh, I felt bad because I felt like I was facilitating this out of nowhere. Honestly, she'd just been out to do a group quick. Come back into this thing.
I was doing PE on
Wednesday.
Yeah,
she's like, he's wearing shorts. He looked really weird. And I was like,
oh, did he?
Let's not be too mean to him. Okay, maybe he looked a bit weird. We don't have to say it in front of everyone.
That's really funny. If one of my kids said that to me about you, I would have been like, well, was he wearing his ogre shorts? So I'm sorry, but you were nicer than I am.
No, I just immediately felt bad because the whole conversation we had before about even the children think it's weird when men have like legs out and stuff. It's not something that's normal.
Yeah.
And I was like, am I going into this? It is funny though. Like
I think it's more that it's probably more that we wear trousers 99.9% of the time. So when they do see us in something else, and especially me who wears the same clothes all the time, see me in anything different, they'd be like, oh, and that's weird.
You in sportswear is odd, isn't it?
Yeah. I had one sock inside out as well. Do you remember me saying at the end, one of the kids was on the floor when I was showing them what to do in the hall while I'm standing up and just put his hand up and went, one of your socks is inside out.
Unbelievable.
And I was like, all right, okay, there's nothing that all the kids laughing.
Okay, fine. Did you want to check your spelling mistakes and you're independent, right? Or is it just my socks that you can notice from a mile off? Anyway, one last thing before we move on, and this is like kind of just a bit of advice, I guess, to people who maybe earlier on in their career, even you. We played this game, so we finished after. Oh my god! Like the first time in about a year where we finished the lesson, and we had a very awkward amount of time left. It was like 15, 20 minutes.
Wow!
We're reading a class book in English, and we do English sets. So I didn't want to read the class book to them because then we'd all be on different points of the book. It would mess everything up. So about 20 minutes, I was like, okay. Listen, if you guys can go and get your stuff very sensibly and come back and sit down, I'll get a little game ready for us. And we played Mad Libs. For anyone who doesn't know, Mad Libs is where there's a story with gaps. Okay. Right. And you'll say to them, okay, give me an adjective, give me a noun, give me a plural noun. And you go through and it's like a mini spag lesson because you can make it that way by talking about, I want an adjective.
Yeah.
And they'll go running. I'm like, oh, that's not an adjective. That's a verb. It's an action word. An adjective describes something. So it's still educational, but it's so funny. And the kids would this always goes down so well with them because it's complete nonsense. It was like, give me a noun. And they go toilet. And I'm like, excellent. Because I know it's going to be crazy in the story. So you put toilet in, you put a person down. They had Olivia Rodrigo. Let's put her in, who's a singer. All these random stuff. And at the end, you press generate. And it generates this story where the gaps have been filled in by the words.
So it puts it into a little...
Exactly. So it's a small narrative where on its own, the narrative would be really boring. It might be like a pizza party, right?
Yeah.
And so our pizza party was, I felt so lucky this week to have a pizza with toilets and bogies on them. And then they keep reading it. The kids are losing their minds. And when they hear their word in the story, they're like, that was my word! And now it's on a pizza and we can't eat it, can we? And it was so nice. I had 8 kids at the end come up to me, can you write it on a piece of paper? I'm going to Google it and do it at home.
So what is it then? Is it a proper website?
It's just Mad Libs. So you can just Google Mad Libs.
Mad Libs.
And Mad Libs is like the name. It's like charades, right? Yeah. So it's not like a set thing. It's just called Mad Libs.
Yeah.
So loads of people who do Mad Libs, loads of companies and stuff. But do it with your kids, like a little mini 10-15 minute GPS thing. It was so engaging. And the idea that loads of kids at the end were laughing hysterically, had basically just done a GPS lesson without realizing and come to us to do it at home. I was like, Christ, that is what we need to be doing with these children. Finding fun ways like we always do with your blow dart maths and all that kind of stuff.
That was just nonsense.
It is nonsense, but it sums up how I like to do my teaching, and you, I think, which is if the kids are fully engaged in something, you can hide the learning almost. You can just recap stuff, get them to think about it.
Learning is a requirement almost to play the game properly, which they really want to play.
Exactly.
Well, if you don't know what adjectives, you can't really play, can you?
Precisely. And then you can turn around and say, someone that said big, and I was like, no. This needs to be the funniest story ever. So then they go away and they think, oh, okay. Even if they think of a better word than big or a more exotic word that you wouldn't have seen before. We were doing some reading and one of the vocab words we looked at was ancient. Very simple word, but for children who are like 7 or 8, 9, not one they'd often use. And they were using words like ancient and flamboyant and stuff that were on our vocab wall. It was just nice because then it goes in the story. It's just hidden learning. And they're my favorite types of things, I think, where the children are almost tricked into learning through having a good time.
Yeah, definitely. Can you spell flamboyant?
Yeah, I can. It's all jingle.
You got saved by the bell.
So as you can tell from the title, we're going to have a little chat about absence. And I say little chat, I think it's going to be another long one. We're going to try and aim for an hour. If it's a bit over, it's because we're having a good conversation. But absence is a huge focal point at the minute in education. We've talked about teacher workload reduction, strikes, all that kind of stuff. Almost it can come across sometimes quite self-centered, can't it? We're talking about our experiences and we're always trying to put to the front, actually, the reason we're going on strike and the reason we talk about well-being is because at the end of the day, that's what impacts the children the most. Because no matter what people say or think, I know for a fact that as teachers, the individual children and all of them together are what is at the front of our mind. That's what we want to get the most out of this whole system. So absence is a big, big, big barrier to achieving that when actually they're not even getting into the school building.
Yep.
There's a huge kind of focal on it right now because of post-COVID, absence is worse than ever. It is not recovered. So we've got some stats that we're going to go through, Hayden. Before we go through these stats, as a teacher, why is it that we wanted to have this chat? Why do we think it's worth talking about? And do the stats we'll talk about in the future kind of reflect what you see as a teacher?
100%. It is crazy different. And I do wonder if it's like that for everyone. Clearly, when we look at the stats, on average, clearly it is. But, I'd like to know if my experience has been similar to most people or worse than maybe the average.
So what do you see that is different to before COVID?
There's just two main things, I think, maybe three. One of them is
maybe four.
Maybe four, maybe it's six. When kids are off. So in the last 3 years, I've noticed that when kids are off, it just tends to be a much longer period than it ever was before.
Right.
You quite often used to get kids off one day. Like one day they were they had a stonking cold, there's that one peak day where you just feel like rubbish, and they're off that day, back in the next day.
Sure.
And at the moment, it's kind of like, 2 weeks off. So 2 weeks. You had a cold. 2 weeks off. And I'm finding that's happening a lot. But also like the threshold of just what kids are off for.
Yeah.
Just seems to be way more chilled. Blasé, that's the word I'm looking for. Just like, I'm like, really? You're off for that? I would never say that to a kid.
No, of course not.
Because we've said before on our podcast, 99.9% of the time, it's not really the kid's fault. I do think it is, as a parent, especially if primary school we're thinking of right now. Secondary school may be a bit different. It is kind of the parent's responsibility, really, to get your kid to school if they're 6 years old, isn't it?
Sure. On the whole, there'll be certain things we'll talk about later. SEND, mental health, different illness. We know there are, but we're talking run of the mill.
Yeah, I'm talking right now. Just the kids that they're just a bit poorly, or they just don't want to be in school. So I'm not talking legitimate absences. I'm talking like you're just poorly.
Sure.
Or maybe even going on holiday or something like that.
So do you think we'll talk about holidays? That's really interesting because I think we're going to have some different opinions there. But so in terms of that kind of idea of children are off for longer, I've not thought about that, but that's absolutely true. And do you think that's a hangover from the COVID, stay indoors thing where, even when you were feeling well with COVID, it was 5 days indoors. No matter how you feel, 5 days indoors. Do you think that's had a bit of a hangover?
Yeah.
Do you think the trust has been eroded? What do you think are the reasons for what you're saying?
I've not thought about it before, but that's got to be it, isn't it? So all I have thought about is it's not a coincidence that since COVID, the absence is a massive problem.
Sure.
It's definitely linked.
Yeah.
So what part of COVID? I don't know. And I think maybe that's true. It is the whole you've got COVID and you're not even ill with COVID a lot of the time. Some people weren't ill with it. They just had it. Stay at home. First, was it 13 days?
At first, it was about 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of I do think maybe we've got a bit used to the idea of, it's okay to have a bit of time off of school if you're a little bit poorly.
Yeah.
Or, you just, you want to milk another couple of days out of it. I don't know. But it's definitely a problem since COVID.
And I think
that's what I can say.
I agree. And I think before we go into these details now and break everything down, because we're going to look at a report that was this committee that was part of the House of Commons, a cross-party thing that kind of put their findings and their ideas towards the government. We're going to talk about that in a second, auditive absence and whether we agree and what we think can be done. I think what I want to lump in with absence as well, though, is lateness. And this idea of it seems to be for a lot of people now, both children and adults, that they think it's okay to be late. There's no rush anymore. Oh no, we've got to get to school on time because every second of learning is really important. And in the early parts of my career, I was definitely someone, even as a teacher, who kind of rolled my eyes sometimes to that. Like, all right, 5 minutes here and there is not going to hurt. But we're talking now about if children are late every single day to school, and it's by half an hour, 40 minutes, sometimes the entire first lesson. If you actually look back at a week at the end, there might be some children who, although they were in school every day, missed 80% of their maths learning if you teach maths first. They missed every single registration session when the school's trying to do some catch-up groups with them. And inevitably, and we'll talk about the groups who are hit more by absences, inevitably the children you want to do the most work with and the most catch-up with to help from the COVID absences and to boost their attainment are the children who are off. So there's a double whammy there of, cool, we've got all these interventions running and only 30% of the children are in for them. So it's lateness, absence, the whole kind of attitude towards school and its importance have completely, to me, been turned upside down.
It's a bit too laid back now. Not of everyone, because I have found over the last few years, it is repeat offenders. I'm not finding that all 30 of my class are sporadically having different sort of days where they're maybe not in or they're coming in quite late. It is generally, over the last few years, it's the same handful of families that, where the kids are coming in really, really late.
With that in mind then, and we're going to talk about this later, there's got to be some underlying things going on as well. There have got to be, what are the reasons that this has happened? Now, COVID's obviously going to be a big one. The erosion of trust, I think, between the average person and the government. When you turn around and tell people that school's closed for children, and it's because of this, and we say it's okay, that's going to erode trust eventually when, okay, well, you closed the schools for 2 months. Why can't I take my kid out for 2 weeks?
I'll never forget Boris. I know I've said this on the podcast ages ago, but I've got to say it again because I'll never, ever forget it. It's like a core memory of mine now. Was when that Christmas, I don't know what year it was,
2021.
I think it was 2021 Christmas.
Well, Christmas 2020.
Yeah,
leading
going
into
2021, January, where he was adamant, everything was saying we should not be sending kids back to school. We were at like peak COVID time. It was terrible, terrible time. Everything was pointing towards let's not send kids back to school straight away after the Christmas holidays. Boris, adamant we were going to do it. We all went in for one day and then the next day he closed the schools. That for me, that sort of summarizes what you're saying there. Like I didn't have much faith in him anyway, but from that point onwards, I absolutely had zero hope that even for the future of the country with that kind of leadership. And I can imagine a lot of parents, that's, that kind of thing. Why would you trust the government? Like, or you need to be in school, but also, no, it's fine. The last second, change it. Of course, they're going to start losing trust in. This advice is a bit hit and miss, really, because last year I spent 13 days off 3 times, actually, over the year. And
my kid was fine. My kid had no symptoms, and they missed out on all this stuff. It must be really frustrating. It was frustrating for us as teachers. I think, before we get into all details again, I know we're going to have a really interesting chat here, but I really don't want this to turn into a pointing the finger and blame thing. I know we've already said it's the parents' responsibility to get children in. That is true, but there are going to be reasons why there's this huge trends. These huge trends don't happen for nothing. No. There's going to be some underlying reasons. We're going to try and get into them and think, okay, well, it's going to take a long while to fix, but what can we do to fix them? So let's get into some statistics. Cool. These can't be, argued with. This is just what has happened. So it's as simple as that.
Well, I don't know about that.
Yeah, well, was it from the government? So absence has doubled from pre-COVID to 2023. So just before COVID 2019, absence ran at about 4 to 5%. After COVID, it's almost hitting 8%. So again, 4 to 8 might not sound like a lot. Think about the hundreds of thousands of children that that's affecting every single day.
Think of the relationship. It's double.
It's doubled. Yeah. Where you had 3 children persistently absent, you now have 6 in your class.
Yeah.
And talking about being persistently absent, and there's a threshold for this, it simply means that this isn't a one-off problem, like you said. This becomes a repeat offence. Yeah. 1 in 5 children are defined as persistently absent in school.
One of 5 of the absent. So 1 of 5 of that 8%. Basically.
No, 1 in 5 children.
1 in 5 children.
1 in 5 children.
20% of children
persistently absent. If you walked into a school, 1 in 5 of any of the children in the school are persistently average.
20% of kids are persistently absent.
Exactly. I'll explain why. The 8% absence, that's rolling. So any given day, 8% of kids are off. Okay. To be persistently absent, you have to be off for 10% or more of school time.
Of the year.
Just in general. Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
so to be off for 10% or more, if you think about it, that's 1 in 10. So 1 day of absence every 2 weeks minimum. For every 2 weeks of a year, that's persistent absence. 1 in 5 children are missing 1 day at school or more every 2 weeks.
That is so much more than I thought it was going to be.
It's incredible. When you sit down, and I bet if you look back at registers and stuff, you actually sit and work it out. You'll be like, one day out of 2 weeks.
It does make sense because we're in a culture now where we celebrate when everyone's in.
I know.
It's like, hey, everyone's in today because it so rarely happens now.
Yeah. So on any given day, you'll have 2 or 3 people off.
Yeah.
I must say very quickly before we carry on, I've noticed this because just in my school where the bell goes at 8:40 in the morning and then maths will start at 8:50, it kind of gives a 10-minute grace period. So what I'm about to say isn't the amount of children who are in when math starts, but it's an indication of the kind of, what we might see in schools where when the bell goes at 8:40, I've started to track how many children are lining up ready to come in. Okay. I had last week on my 3 days in.
Out of how many?
Out of 31. 10, 11 and 12.
Ready to
come in at 8:40. And we want, it's open at 8:40, come in. The gates open at 8:30 for the playground.
Yeah.
So 8:40 is when we walk in. Math starts at 8:50. At 8:40, I had 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
This week, on Monday, I walked in. There were 5 people in my line at 8:40.
5 kids. So for context, same school, I get consistently like 20 to 28 kids at 8:40.
Yeah. So, we're not...
So yours are just not...
It's not... Obviously, it's not something that every single person is experiencing the same.
No, but you are experiencing that.
But that's and again, by the time maths comes around, they stream in.
Yeah. Do you find that you get a lot streaming in the next 10 minutes after that?
Yeah, I'll get a lot streaming in, but still, when I send on the register, it's very, very common for me to have at least 6 children not in the building.
Wow, and then they have to check.
And then by the afternoon, I'll have 1 or 2 not in the building. So these do.
So they are coming in late.
They do come in. Yeah. So again, talking about persistently absent and then severely absent, even more. So if you think 1 in 10 days is enough, that's doubled the amount of children who are severely absent from 1% to almost 2%. So it's a picture which is very clear to see. And if you strip it back, absence was going down steadily from 2010. It was something that, although not lots was being ploughed into it, there was clearly still a bond between the family, the government and school where we understood the importance of getting in. COVID completely diminished that. Completely.
Yeah, it must have done because I think the culture has changed, hasn't it? I can feel it. The culture used to be, you were almost shunned. If you were bringing your kid in late, it was almost like it's embarrassing, isn't it? It really wasn't it? It was an embarrassing feeling because it wasn't as common.
Yeah.
Oh God, we woke up late. Oh God, I'm embarrassed, But now it's kind of like, we woke up late again for the 7th time this term. Go on then, you better head to school. It's 9:15. Go on, that'll be all right. You'll be all right. Just tell them you're late. It's fine. I do feel like that is how it's. I don't know, but there's lots of reasons which we're going to get into today. So,
and I think it's important when we have these chats. We're always the first people to say, well, there's a reason for everything. So those people who say with behaviour, well, have you tried building a relationship with them? And it's like, okay, look. We know, and we're going to talk about it, so please don't get your knickers in a twist, okay? If you're listening to this and thinking, oh, no, they're not thinking. Yes, we know, and we're going to talk about all the reasons why this is the case.
We know everything, all right?
But there are also some people who just need to get their kids into school.
Yeah.
They just need to do it, okay? It's about having a bit of discipline, a bit less laziness, and that would help. However, does that explain the trend?
No.
Obviously not, because the trend wouldn't just
because those people always exist.
Exactly.
Genuinely.
Exactly. So there's no point getting all worked up and worried about, they're just so lazy, get them into school. No, something else has happened here, and I'd love to dive into it.
Yeah.
So before we do, very quickly, there's obviously homeschooling.
Yeah.
That is another thing where it's not very formalized. There's not like an official formal education. Not for people who aren't receiving a formal education. There's not an official government register to kind of just track and make sure those children are still getting the education they need.
Yeah, of course.
Homeschooling works for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I'm not against homeschooling, but I do think that it's okay to say, are these children getting the right kind of education?
It's a system. It's simple as this, isn't it? Homeschooling objectively is not a bad thing, but it is a system that could much, much more easily be abused than the school system.
Absolutely.
Because there is just a lack of register and a lack of government-wide systems to monitor these children are getting a proper education for the correct amount of time or whatever. So it is a system that can be abused, and I do think there should be some further monitoring now more than ever to make sure these children are receiving an education.
Definitely. Let's have a quick jingle, and then we'll come in and we'll talk about what you're
I like the phrase. We've turned into use this phrase. Let's have a quick jingle. It's like let's have a quick break so we can get our thoughts together.
Yeah.
Let's have a quick jingle.
We're going to come back. You've heard all the stats now. We're going to dive a bit deeper. What's causing these absences and what can be done about it.
And is Dylan going to go on holiday with his child when he's at school?
In term time.
Big
question.
Right, so we're back. Dylan, before we get into the juicy stuff, I do want to ask you a personal question because we've both got kids now. If you didn't know already,
size 36.
Oh no, not the diet.
Oh,
we haven't talked about the diet, but we're not getting because we'll talk about that next week. Right, so holidays is obviously a thing. That's the thing. We're not going to talk really much about holidays in this episode, but let's just do a quick conversation now. So,
you mean holidays, not school holidays?
Okay, I'm talking. Classic type of absence is kids being away on holiday during term time, right? Sure. And every teacher's like, God damn it, because you want to get some stuff done.
I'm not.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What's your question?
Okay, my question is, we have an extra week, the way our school works out, where we're off for a week, where most schools are still in. It's in term time.
Sure.
Holidays are cheaper. We're going on holiday this year in that week.
Yep.
Together. Would you take Rory out of school in that week to go on a cheaper holiday, considering they are about a third of the price?
Yes. Yeah. This is make it really clear to people listening that we're not these draconian. Every second of school you must be in it, and the government say so, and the government say so. You must do it with your child. No, we hate the government. Like, don't worry about that. But my point is, I have never ever been of the impression that it annoyed me when children went on holiday in term time. Firstly, it's a capitalist absolute nightmare. I hate capitalism anyway. But the disgusting price rises and hikes during half. As long as that's a thing, I will never begrudge anyone going away on holiday. Okay, do you want to do an £80 fine and a £500 holiday, or do you want to do a £1,500 holiday? I'll take the £80 fine. I think.
Definitely.
If children are being in school consistently and it's a pre-planned holiday when you know you'll be off for a week and you can easily find out what the children are doing, or you know what, not, and just enjoy your holiday and then come back and be absolutely fine. I've never had a problem with that.
Just let the teacher stress about catching them up.
Well, I'm a teacher. I do it enough for other children. They can do it for my children too.
I see.
But my point is I've never ever as a teacher felt like it's been so detrimental when a child's had like a lovely holiday away with their parents for a bit and they come back. It's not something I go, to the office, I think my child was on holiday. I don't care.
Okay, like the owls question. How many term time holidays until it starts annoying you and you think actually this is irresponsible?
I think 1 a year is acceptable. I think 2 a year I'd be like, all right, come on, you've had your cheap holiday. You don't need. No one needs 2 holidays a year.
You don't need 1 holiday a year, do you?
Yeah, no. I think if you're going on holiday, you're going to do it in term time because it's a third of the price. So if you can, as an adult, take your child.
Take 3 then
for a week.
Take 3 in term time. It costs the same as the 1 holiday you could have done not term.
Yeah, you could do, or use the £1,000 that you've saved to do something else. I don't know. But my point is, I'm happy for that as long as it's in reasonable, which to me is one a year.
Yeah.
You've gone away for a week. Cool.
Yeah, I spoke to a secondary school teacher, funnily enough, recently about this, just a friend, and they were like, they had a slightly different opinion because they're like, because there's so many more like pivotal points like GCSEs and stuff. Where it's like, it is really frustrating though when it's like a month before GCSEs.
Well, we've had children go away during SATs.
Yeah, or the week before or whatever.
But is it more frustrating for the children or is it more frustrating for the school?
For the school, it's not frustrating for the children. If anything, it's even better for the children. Now they have to do the stupid SATs.
So who actually cares?
Yeah,
does it actually matter?
Yeah, if the children? That's why I try not to. Any time my kids go on holiday, when they come back and their parents have told them to pretend they weren't or something, and they're tanned, and they're like, "Oh, I was ill." I'm like, "Yeah, did you have a nice holiday?" I'm just like, let's cut this. I'm not going to get cross at you for being. It's not your fault you went on holiday.
Did you have a nice holiday? You then?
Not really. It genuinely would only annoy. It has annoyed me a couple of times in the past because I've had children who have genuinely gone on like 3 or 4.
Yeah. Sure.
And the only thing that does annoy me is I've very rarely seen this, but any entitlement that comes with it. If you take your child out of holiday, you've got to deal with the repercussions of them missing education. Right. I've had parents come in and say, "We're going on holiday. I need you to prepare, a booklet of work for maths, a booklet of work for English, so we can do all of the stuff. I don't want them to miss out on anything." It's like, if you didn't want them to miss out,
do you not want them to miss out? Yeah,
yeah. And I've genuinely, any time that's ever happened, I've just gone no.
Yeah.
I've said nope because you've chosen to take them out of term time. It's genuinely not my problem.
And when they come back, you're still going to spend some time catching them up.
Of course, of course, inadvertently will. But that's the only.
You're adding to my workload because you want to you want to go on holiday in term time.
But you know what? If a low-income family who maybe wouldn't get to go on holiday that year, if their only choices are we don't go on holiday or we go in this one time in this 1 week in term time, would I be annoyed? Not at all. I'd be like,
it's enrichment.
God, I'd almost on the side be like, please do go on that holiday. I'll help catch your kid up.
Can you imagine, right, turning around and saying to a child and a family, you can't have that enrichment at all. By the way, all enrichment's been cut and we don't do anything in school that's fun anymore because we've got no money.
Limit, can't we? Anyway, enough about holidays. So basically, I just want to get it across that, it's like you said, we're not draconian. I think absence, look, we can deal with some absence. Some absence is fine, and a holiday every now and then, whatever, is stupid.
And if you're ill, you're ill.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll be fine. But we're talking about a massive rise in overall absence and where that's come from, and actually it is having impacts in general. And why is it happening? So Dylan,
the top reason children are off is illness. Still.
Yeah,
it was illness before; it's illness now. However, what's really interesting about this is the amount of children who are off ill has massively increased since COVID. So again, it's tracked with a doubling pretty much, okay? So are children twice as ill as they were before COVID? No, I don't think that they are. Maybe obviously there's COVID now, so there might be a bit more illness going around, but we've always had flu seasons. We've always had cold seasons. We've always had children with tonsillitis, children off for different reasons, poorly tummies, poorly headaches, whatever it is. We've always had illness and we've still got it. But why is there more authorized illness right now than there was before COVID? Clearly, COVID's had an impact. So the threshold for what we would say as parents for keeping children home, that threshold has lowered massively, I think.
So what do we do?
What do we do about it?
What can we do?
The committee said this, and I think it's excellent advice. And there's going to be a running theme here, Hayden. Very much like last week when we talked about the workload reduction. There's lots of fantastic ideas.
Yeah.
Nothing will happen.
I tell you what.
Nothing will work.
Don't say it.
Go on.
Don't say it. What do you think?
Yeah.
Listen to the first point.
Okay.
Maybe listen to the first couple. Then we'll say why none of this will happen. The one thing that's going to stop everything from happening.
Yeah. After 14 years of a Tory government, what could it be? So the threshold for keeping kids has obviously moved. A big thing the committee have said needs to happen is really targeted, like kind of investment almost, and this idea of we need parents to know exactly through guidance when to and when not to send your child to school. What is it that might be contagious and therefore be a bit of a vector in school and spread illness and more children are off, therefore you keep your one child at home? Or when it's actually okay, you've got a bit of a poorly tummy, let's see how you get on, crack on, go into school.
I think that would be really effective. I genuinely think that something as simple as that would be really effective. A little poster that goes home to every kid, it goes put up around schools, and maybe there's a couple of adverts on it, like they did during COVID with the guidance. Most people did follow the guidance. Obviously you get people that don't, and they're the loudest people. But the majority of people do follow it and actually listen to it, and it's subconsciously even if they're like, oh, whatever. It will go in. This is when you should send your kid to school. This is when you can think about not sending them to school. It's got to meet this kind of threshold because the threshold has moved.
As a teacher, how confident are you with knowing when to send a child home because they're ill or not?
How confident am I?
Yeah, how confident are you to look at a child, they present to you, they say, oh, I'm feeling this, or that. You can see their symptoms. As class teacher, it's down to us to say, okay, look, carry on with your work. We'll get to lunchtime. Or, okay, go down to the office. We'll ring parents. How do you, because this is the same thing.
It's a hard one,
This is the same thing. I never, ever want to send a child home. I want them to be in school as much as possible. I maybe put it off more than I should sometimes. I say, okay, we're in maths, okay? And they say, oh, I'm feeling a bit poorly. Oh, wait till break time, get some fresh air, run about.
I always say
They'll wait till break time, come in for English. Oh, well, it's nearly lunchtime now, so should we see how we feel at lunch? Get a bit of food down you. Lunchtime comes. Well, eat your food and go outside, a bit of fresh air. It's the afternoon. Oh, well, it's the afternoon now. I've only got a couple of hours. Should we do our handwriting?
We don't want to ring parents now because they're going to be annoyed because they're only going to come pick you up in an hour.
You kind of kick the can down the road, all whilst obviously making sure the children are feeling okay.
I do that probably 99% of the time, and the kids 100% of the time of my whole career have never not been fine.
Yeah.
So there's the confidence, I guess. The confidence comes from 9 years of doing that, and they've never once not been okay.
So when would you send someone home? Like, do you feel like you would benefit as well from any guidance or
I definitely would, because I am still blagging it, really. If you think I'm just lucky that actually those kids are fine. I think I've obviously I've taught thousands of children now, so I am starting to recognise signs when children are just blagging it a bit. Maybe they're just common, they're what's it called, but they're persistently absent children where I'm like, okay, you're clearly not constantly ill all the time, you're actually just okay. But I would benefit from some guidance because I'd like there to be a bit more of a clear threshold because I am just kind of doing it on my own. Understanding, but it's when kids have actually been sick. And so on
that's a red card for me, is in terms of okay, go
vomited straight home to me, straight home. When children have any kind of diagnosis or any sort of medical history that I know about, where
it's flaring up,
and I'm like, okay, this actually is a condition. Or typically, if it's a child who has really good absence,
what do you mean? Attendance.
Really good attendance. Sorry, they've got really good attendance. Those kids that are in when they've got a sniffly cold.
Yeah.
If they have a bit more credit, I think, almost. And I think that's just how life works, isn't it? You know, when I know their parents send them in, even when I'm thinking, oh, they are quite poorly.
Yeah.
If they are really complaining about feeling really ill, and I've done the whole, I've banned it off till break time, whatever, and they're still like, I really don't feel good.
Yeah.
I do generally consider bringing home. But I don't, even then, I don't say they need to come home. It's sort of like, oh, this is the situation. What do you think, parents?
Sure.
Because they might go, no, they're putting it on this morning because they wanted to watch the new Pokemon.
Hey, it's not 1998.
they wanted to watch that new Pokemon.
The Milky Bar kids on TV. No, it's not 1950s. Yeah, I guess that's right. But my point is, that's not something I'm really, really confident on, and it's a theme we're going to come onto again terms of SEM provision and stuff like that in terms of a teacher, for sure. Yeah. I think just to summarize that point, really good idea, but a lot of that trust has been broken. I don't know what we can do to build those gaps with the government again, because even when the government released this guidance, I can imagine there are a whole bunch of people that go, whatever, you made my kid miss months of education. So nothing you say about how important education is going to resonate with me because my kid was fine and they're off school.
I guess if schools are proactive about it, it might come from a different avenue. You know how schools used to be really hot on. Yeah. And I don't see this as much anymore. And this was clearly maybe an initiative that came from the government once upon a time. The whole the posters that were like, if you miss one day, it equates to this, and the whole reading ones as well, like the opposite one where it's like if you read for more than 10 minutes a day,
all these vocab words,
those kind of like stat posters, I reckon they probably trickled down, and I think they had quite a big impact because I still think about them, and I think you could I think it could work having some guidance. I reckon that would tackle a big chunk of those parents that we were talking about earlier who really they just need to get their kids their kids are fine. Maybe they're a bit anxious now about health anxiety,
definitely,
and they're not sure, so they keep them home.
But guidance would help them. Sure.
Guidance would help those kind of people. It wouldn't help what we're going to talk about now. Other reasons that children are off. So we're going to talk about SEND, so children with special educational needs. And also we're going to talk about lower income families.
Yeah, we'll come on to that because we'll talk about the whole deterrent of fines and stuff.
Yeah, and how that guidance maybe wouldn't affect them because that's not the reason they're not coming in. So we'll get to that in a bit.
Exactly. I think what we talked about there is very much on the increase in children who are actually ill and have authorised illness. There's got to be a reason why that seems to have doubled. Yeah. Kids aren't twice as sick as they were.
The threshold has just moved. We need to pull it back down.
Exactly right. So let's move on then to what you just said, because I think some of the biggest barriers that we have to absence right now are certain groups of children, especially post-COVID, who are way, way, way more likely to suffer from absence than any other groups of children. And this is where I think we need to stop pointing the finger at children and parents and start looking at the systems that we have in place. So this is definitely now where we're going to be shifting from any kind of blame on parents at all or children to systemic failures, I think. Yeah. So I'd say the three things we're going to talk about, just to talk about what you just said there: SEND, children who have special educational needs; mental health, since COVID is just unbelievable in the worst way possible; and low income. And the worst thing is when we have things overlapping. Low income SEND children who are struggling with mental health. It's like, you're in a situation where low attendance is, very understandable. So let's start off with these barriers that we have. So with special educational needs, this is a big thing. We talked about wanting to do something to do with absence on stories and Instagram this week. You can follow us at Teach, Sleep, Repeat Podcast. It's where it's all happening, guys. We've got loads of new followers. Hello, everyone, if you're listening and you're brand new. But on Instagram, we've got some messages. Got a message again from Kizzy, the person I talked about who sent us an email.
I remember.
Yep. With SEND, she said, look, guys, when you do this, she's really looking forward to it. When you do this, you've got to talk about how we are failing our SEND children, essentially. And we truly are. SEND children, as class teachers, we now are the central focal point for providing these children with all the provision that they need. We're the people who write their IEPs, their health plans. Yep. We're the people who write their targets. We're the people who will, track how we're going to meet those targets and what we need to put in place, whether it's assistance, whether it's us, whether it's time before.
And also have to action it because we are their teachers.
Yeah, we're with them every day. And do you know what? That's no, I don't think anyone begrudges that being part of their job. The worst thing in the world that's happening with our SEND children is now we are systemically failing them because of such a lack of training. Yeah. Since this came in, this idea that the class teacher is the linchpin to SEND provision, how much training have we received?
as a nation, funded training, nothing.
It's classic government saying, we could just make them in charge. What? Yeah. This huge where these children are our most needy children in the country, in our classroom, who of course we put everything in for them we possibly can do, and they're the bulk of our attention anyway, because they have to be. Suddenly we're now the people in charge of all of that with no formal training. If there are SEND children who are struggling to get into school because their needs are not being met in school, a mainstream school, which is where we want them to be, and we'll come on to that in a second, there's nothing, we can't magically make them get in. I can't magically be the person to get that child into school. It's not going to happen until we have systemic, and you're going to know what it is now in terms of what we need to have to solve this problem. Money needs to be put in. It's not a joke anymore. Look at the numbers. So some stats. SEND have significantly higher rates of absence than everyone else. A big part of that are legitimate absences. So it's something we need to be careful of when we talk about this. SEND children are far more likely to have appointments, to have health visits that mean their absence is higher, and it's authorised. So we need to not make comparisons.
Part of their life that we cannot discriminate them against, but just because they have, they can't help not being in school for those appointments and those anything related to the reason they're SEND.
And I think one of the biggest issues we've got with SEND children and their rate of absence is mainstream schools have to be the place where we aim to have children. However, for that to be the case, we need the correct support. We're in a real limbo at the minute. We're in a massive limbo in education where we're failing these children because we're not providing enough support in mainstream schools for them, but we're pretending that that's still the place for them right now. It needs to be the place for them, but there's simply not enough funding or money in place to be able to do that. We're not magic. We can't magic up this support.
It's like having a GP who hasn't done the training yet. It's like, well, do you know what I mean? In terms of like, if we're sat there, if you just happen, because it is potluck, if you just happen to have 4 children in your class with very, very individualized learning needs, that is crucial that we meet for them, right, as an individual, and it's so important, and it should be so important. And we're not even saying we should take this away.
Absolutely,
it absolutely is our job to meet those children's needs. It's not going to happen if no one has given the teacher, me, whoever it is in this situation, any training on it other than here's a report that you can read about their
here's a report you can read, diagnosis. And you've got to write the next 3. And know exactly what they need from this report.
Sometimes that's it. I find it's like, here's this 8-page report, like a summary of the diagnosis of this child. Now you know what condition they have or whatever it is. I'm like, cool.
So I've got to write a report for someone with ADHD and someone with high functioning ASD, and also someone who's got a medical, a diabetes, monitor, and we need to be sure. I've got to completely understand all 3 of them and put things in place and have no extra funding or training whatsoever,
or time to do so.
Okay. Right. And then their parents keep them at home because maybe their needs aren't being completely met by the system. I wonder. Should we fix that? Let's just get them in, shall we? Let's just point the finger.
No, Dylan. It costs money.
It costs money.
It
costs money. It makes me angry.
That means we can't.
It makes me angry though. I'm actually getting annoyed just thinking about it, that if there are children who have special educational needs, it's in the title, we cannot pretend that these needs can be met willy-nilly until the government step up and put funding in place in the right places. Don't just throw money at nothing. Training, support, one-to-one provision when needed. If the aim is going to be to have them in the mainstream, which it should be as much as is possible for every child, obviously not for every child, but for most children, the number one aim should be mainstream until then they go somewhere else.
I'd be interested, just before we move on to the next point about mental health, just sticking with that for a second, the whole mainstream school. That's the only part that triggered me when I was reading that committee report. When it was saying these children should be in mainstream school and only be using specialist schools as like intervention almost, rather than being there all the time. And I was like, no, because I'd like to know, based on the system I'm in, how many times, all of our teacher listeners out there, have you in the past had a child in your class where you've maybe had a conversation with them and been like, they just need to be, they shouldn't be here. They shouldn't be here. They should be at a specialist school. And that really, if you really break that down, because I've done that many times over my career, that shouldn't be the conversation we're having. The conversation that we should be having is, cool, so what can we access now? I've identified that this kid is not coping well just in the mainstream setting with no extra intervention. What have we got in place? What can we do? What funding have we got? What training and resources have we got to help them? If we had a good government we would be able to have that dialogue, and it wouldn't result in us being like, oh, I feel like I'm failing this child because I've got nothing that I can do in my resources or my time or my training. There's nothing's been put in place for this kid. That's the problem. It's really changed my mind on it because I was a bit triggered at first about that, and now I'm like, no, it's just the system's broken. It's not me. I should be getting the training. I should be getting the resources so I can help that kid happily and not feel like I'm letting them down.
Teacher guilt is the worst thing in the world.
Yeah,
it's the worst thing in the world because as soon as those 30 odd kids walk through your door, they're your children for a year. And no matter what their needs are, you want to meet every single of those child's needs. Yeah. It might be that one child has a need of simply having a chat with them every now and then, and they're not on an SEND register, but you individually learn their needs because good teachers do that. There's another child who needs one-to-one support every single day.
I'd feel
and you don't have that either.
So stressed if I just happened to have a class in the future where it was like, okay, you've got 5 children in your class with individual healthcare plans. I'd feel really, really stressed, and I'd panic about. I'd want to do it because
also you've got a child who's got English as additional language, by the way, in your class as well. And also you've got a class where there's just consistent absences, and just because they.
But it'd be really easy for someone to turn around to me and be like, "Oh, you just don't want to help. You don't want to help those kids." Yeah. It's like, no, that's not what would make me stress. I'd be stressed because I know I won't get any support to help, and I've just got to do it off my own back somehow, and I might not do it very well because I don't know. I need the training.
When their needs aren't met, the finger points to you.
Yeah.
Not the system that's broken. No, because we made the teacher that you're in charge.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why. It's obviously your fault.
It all falls on you now. Anyway, it's all a big horrible circle there. I think maybe you can see that from our analogies, but it's very broken. We need an intervention of funding and training from the government. Guess what? We won't get it. We might get it, actually. We might get it just before the election when they realise no one's going to vote for them.
It's election year. Guys,
so we might get something
from the front line here. 2 teachers, it's broken. Yeah. Another big thing, obviously, SEND provision for a long time. I think it's become more and more mainstream in terms of more accepted from a lot of people. Like, yes, this, these children have these needs. It was brushed under the carpet. It still existed back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, but it's much more in the forefront now. Much more accepted, much more mainstream. Let's say for it to be accepted and we understand this. Do we get the help? No, but we know it's a thing, right?
Can I just, sorry, I want one really quick point because I know you want to move on. But I've spoke to a lot of older people who say to me, yeah, those kids just weren't at school back in my day. Yeah. And they almost see it as it's such a detriment for these kids to be in mainstream school. And the irony is, right, I've seen so many children on the SEND register with severe needs that have absolutely thrived at mainstream school and almost definitely achieved the best version of themselves at that school. Yeah. Maybe compared to if they went to a specialist school where they might just not have had as many, the same. Yeah.
Social aspects, everything.
Yeah, but it's funny because older people would be like, "Oh, it's such a detriment, isn't it, that they've been shoved into mainstream school?" And it's like, no, it shouldn't be. Because if the funding was there, it would be the best thing ever to happen to them. Yeah. It just isn't quite there.
And I think on that point, there are some children who thrive going to specialist schools.
Yeah,
as well.
Of course.
I think the overall point here has to be, guess what? Special educational needs is really individualized, and there's no shortcut to doing it properly other than fully funding.
Yeah, and it's not doing what used to happen, which is anyone remotely
chuck them all away
put them all into the specialist school. It's like, well, some of those children probably shouldn't be there. They would actually be better in mainstream school with a bit of support.
Every individual child with special educational needs really does need of course
some special attention or something.
Individual plan. It's unbelievable.
Anyway, go on, carry on.
Since COVID, I think this is a big thing for adults as well. So obviously you're listening to this. You're an adult. Hello, adult. You also have noticed a big dip in the mental health of the nation ever since. And again, I think this is slightly behind SEND. It's becoming more mainstream and acceptable, but we're definitely getting there rapidly now, I think, especially after COVID, where it's okay to say mental health is physical health and it's just as important and they're both intertwined.
Yeah.
Mental health since COVID, again, huge rise. And I think this is indescribably linked. Undeniably linked, get my prefixes right.
Words.
Undeniably linked to the COVID pandemic and being trapped indoors. Yeah. We did it for a reason, which was good. I'm not one of these people who think that COVID was made up. I'm not one of these people who's going to be like, these bloody scientists. No. It was for a really good reason, but let's not pretend that it didn't have a massive detriment in a different way, which was mental health.
That we need to deal with now.
Yeah, we have to deal with that now. We can't pretend it was not a thing just because we had to do it. So, again, another one of these things, it's funding. And we're going to sound like a broken record. The Child and Mental Health Service, CAMHS, you may have seen it, especially if you're a teacher. This is a service where it's to help mental health with children. And the amount of children experiencing mental health problems has rocketed, both in primary school and especially in secondary school as they reach adolescence. even more so.
So I'm a secondary school teacher now.
Sure.
I've got a child that I've identified maybe over a series of time whose mental health is seriously declining.
Sure, and it's affecting their absence.
Affecting their absence massively.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me is I can contact the Child and Mental Health Services and they will be able to receive some services to help them?
Yeah, in about 3 years. Yeah, because the waiting list for these things, because post-COVID, huge need for it, but nothing's happened in terms of funding. Nothing's happened in terms of widening this. It's inaccessible, this service.
It's years now, isn't it?
It's years for a waiting list.
Years.
Like 18 months. That's 18 months of children not getting into school. And more importantly, by the way, I know we're focusing on children getting into school. That's 18 months with someone suffering from mental health problems without being helped. Like, just look at the bottom line here of we're not helping our children who are suffering from mental health issues. It's disgusting. And one of the things the committee say here is, hello, this, by the way, this also needs funding, please. Government, can you please put some money into this? It was a really good thing, I think, from the committee, which has to happen. They said every secondary school, urgently, never mind primary school, by the way, just secondary school, because it is a big problem in secondary school. We know it's a problem in primary, but at least they said every secondary school urgently, their words, needs funding for mental health provision by 2025. That includes training staff and what to look out for, where to go, and there's no point training staff and making sure as teachers know what to look out for mental health unless professionals are going to come in and help them as well. We need money ploughed into this.
Isn't there a hilarious loop in this system as well? It's even worse where, so I know we've wrote it down as notes, but you know more about this, about them not. So currently an absence for mental health is recorded as an unauthorized absence.
Sure. Because you need medical
evidence.
Yeah.
For it to go down as a legitimate medical reason, and you can't get the medical evidence because there's a 2-year waiting list for it. And I'm just like, oh my God.
So there's this horrible loop of a lot of the unauthorized absences are mental health.
Yeah.
So a big thing the committee have said as well is they need another code. You see codes and registers. For anyone who doesn't know, when you do a register, M is absent for medical. Yeah. C might be like an authorized absence for a different reason. Maybe you're going to like a family funeral.
And different schools have different codes as well.
So it's all coded. But they're saying we need a code for mental health issues so that it is authorized still, and then we can track it. Because at the minute it's just down as unauthorized. It's the same as someone just being late.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same as someone just not being bothered to come in for a morning. It's the same on the register as someone who's suffering from mental health problems.
And if we're not tracking it properly, then it is stupid. It's a stupid start, isn't it? If we're not tracking it properly, then we can't really make proper analysis of what's going on.
No, not at all. I just think... one of the overarching themes here is obviously funding. Yeah. Another overarching theme for me, and it's something I'm really frustrated with as someone who cares. And I said this on our story, right?
Yeah.
That we became teachers because we care about children, right? We became teachers because we want what's best for the children. I think it's really important. As people who care about our kids massively, seeing this happen is so frustrating. And what's even more frustrating is when the government especially try to pretend that we're the experts in everything. Yeah. And I think we need to normalize as teachers saying that we absolutely are not the experts at everything. I'm really good at planning and delivering maths lessons. I'm really quite good at taking a curriculum, understanding how children learn, mapping that out to my class, responding as I go, assessing as I go, changing my learning as I go, getting the children to an end point. And by the way, as I've been going through, not because of any formal training, but I feel like I'm good at building relationships with children and knowing their needs and meeting their needs as much as possible. I'm an expert in that.
Teaching.
I'm an expert at teaching. Like, and there's a lot of really good, amazing teachers out there. Everyone I've worked with is an expert teacher. They're fantastic. And if they're early in their career, they're learning and they're bloody brilliant as well because they've got the drive and the passion. What I cannot pretend that I am is someone who can adequately spot mental health trauma. I'm not someone who can adequately say what a child needs in terms of a provision for a very, very individualized special educational need they have. I'm not trained properly in that.
No.
So when
you can probably do it to a surface level, but you're not an expert.
I'm not an expert. So we need to stop pretending that this can be brushed under the carpet. This cannot be solved by just saying, well, you know, here are the problems, teachers, off you go. No, we need people in school, experts in school, training delivered to make me an expert in something if you want me to be, or people who are experts, because you know what? It's a whole profession. Understanding mental health is an entire profession. Understanding dyslexia is an entire profession. Understanding ADHD is an entire profession. Like, to be an expert at that takes years and years of learning about it and doing it in schools. We cannot pretend that class teachers are that. We are not. We need support. It's the only way this is ever going to change.
Amen to that, my brother. Amen to that. Well, Dylan, that was very passionate, very good, and I enjoyed listening to that. We are going to have a quick jingle break.
No.
This is normally about how long our episodes are, but join us after the jingle because we're going to carry on. We've got one more topic. We're going to be talking about find out after the jingle. Okay, welcome back. Well done for waiting the whole 3 seconds to find out.
Banter.
We know how to keep you here.
Banter.
Anyway, Dylan, got a question for you.
Yep.
The problem, you're going to be a bit embarrassed now.
Okay.
Because you've been talking about this for an hour.
Okay.
Government have kind of solved it though, haven't they?
Oh.
They have already solved this issue.
Oh, what have they done? Have I missed it?
When kids don't come to school, you just give them a fine.
Oh.
So they have solved the problem because if you don't bring your kids to school, we're going to fine you. That's what the government said.
Fines are famously great for deterring everything.
Yeah.
So.
But what was it? Someone said to me before, like fines. Oh, I can't remember. Fines are only a system for the poor.
Yeah.
That's what they are because the rich don't care.
Think about traffic fines, right?
Yeah.
Parking fines, okay? Yeah. If you're incredibly rich, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me start this whole analogy again. If you go and put on a double yellow line, let's say it's a 60 quid fine, okay? Yeah. If you go and pay for parking, it's like £3. Yeah. So us, £3 to 60 quid, blimmin' hell, I'm gonna go and pay my £3. So I don't want to get a £60 fine. When you earn 100 times more than I do, £3 is £60, and the rest. So it's that I don't have to pay anything because I'm rich. And if I do get caught every now and then, it's less proportionally than all you guys are going to spend.
Don't care. It cost me £60 to park my car here. That's the way. That's the analogy
exactly.
I think it was.
When I get caught.
Yeah.
Which is not even all the time. So if what do you think about in terms of that? Would you have a scale for rich people, like a percentage of your income for like parking fines and stuff?
Imagine
that's a big thing.
Well, because speeding fines are like that. I don't know if you know that. No, they've changed over the years. Like speeding fines used to be flat fees, but now they are like. Over certain types of fines anyway, certain types of speeding and things. It's like it's on your weekly income now.
Yeah, I think that's good.
It's like you get fined a week's income.
I saw someone try and defend that. I think it was one of the sidemen. We're going to have a whole episode, by the way, on sidemen and their influence on children. It wasn't KSI. It was another one of the crew that do YouTube stuff. Crew, he tried to defend on a YouTube short that absolutely shouldn't be to do with your money. It's not my fault that I've got more money than you. And then his co-host was like, yeah, but it obviously should though, shouldn't it?
Do you know what a deterrent is?
It's not a deterrent for you because you're talking about doing it.
Yeah. If it's not a deterrent for you anymore, then it's not a deterrent.
Exactly.
It has to be a deterrent for everyone. Exactly. So it might have to scale.
Oh, it's only for poor people. Anyway, why are we talking about deterrents and fines anyway?
Because so in the current system, schools are able to issue a fine. So if you're persistently absent, and we'll talk about the kind of rules, I guess, of like when you're supposed to fine, and the committee has given guidance on it. Fine. So fines have been proven to have an impact in getting children back to school. So that they're not completely useless. Sure. But, with everything, there are pros and cons. And there are a lot of cons to fines.
Yeah. I don't like them.
Is that your gut feeling?
Yeah, I'm just going to jump the gun here and just kind of... I think that's what you were getting at. Because I don't really like them.
No.
I think there's two reasons for this. Number one, I would say on the current climate, everything we've just spoken about... Do you think a fine would solve them problems? So do you think a fine would solve the problem of SEND children not getting the provision they need? Do you think a fine would then be like, oh, suddenly my kid can come in?
My answer is just reality. The fines existed before COVID. They existed through COVID. They still exist now. And all of these problems have still happened. Exactly. So I don't think they'll fix it because they aren't fixing it and they exist right now.
That's such a good point.
But they do have some impact. I don't necessarily think, I wouldn't jump straight to we should get rid of them. Because I do think they probably have a place. There are probably some specific situations in which maybe a parent is taking the mick.
We'll come on to that because let's do it right now actually because there are some instances where you might be in a primary school, let's just say, and then 2 roads away there's another school. The exact same absences have happened. Yeah. And because at the minute it's down to the whim of the head teacher to decide when is suitable for a fine. They've got to meet a threshold. But once that threshold is met, they don't have to issue a fine. It's still down to the head teacher. Yeah. So you could have 2 schools, 2 absences, 2 backgrounds, exactly the same, low-income families. One's getting shafted for 80 quid, which is a huge proportion of their weekly income, their monthly income. It might mean that they go without food for a bit. And one family is just getting away scot-free. What you're saying is, okay, yeah, there should be some fines, but maybe it should be like individualized basis. That's kind of what we've got now, and it's not really working.
I guess so. So it probably isn't working very well. So maybe we do need, again, a bit more guidance on where and how this is to be used. Or, like you said, just a better system, maybe. Yeah. I guess my point is, I wouldn't want to scrap fines if we had nothing else in place.
Sure.
If we had, if the other option was zero deterrence,
okay.
I just don't, I think that, you know, it has some impact.
Can I explain why I think we should get rid of them? And I'm absolutely on the side of...
Yeah, like even if there was nothing in place.
I think just get rid of them, yeah.
Okay, go on.
Because although there's been a minimal difference here, I do think that, and this is backed up by the evidence of the committee, that low-income families, one of the last kind of groups of people we're going to talk about who have been much more impacted by absence, they're much more likely to receive fines because they're much more likely to be absent. Right. I think the impact of a fine on a low-income family is unbelievably huge to the point where even us now as professionals who aren't incredibly rich people, but we are bloody well off compared to the people we're talking about. We've got children living in poverty who already aren't getting enough nutrition, who already we're fighting and arguing that we should be getting free meals for those people. Yeah. If they're missing school, do we think that it's ever remotely good to say, okay, 80 quid please, parents?
I guess in my little analogy in my brain earlier of keeping the fines, I'm never finding those people.
Sure.
That's the problem, isn't it?
But then this is the same problem of it's down to the women of the head teacher.
I wouldn't. They'd be, when I'm talking about looking at individual situations, they'd be the ones I wouldn't be doing it to.
Sure.
But there might be other parents where, you know, maybe they are well off and they're going on their 4th holiday for the year.
So would you have a scale then?
And I'd be like, oh, you're just taking the mick now.
Because the committee say it needs to be more consistent how it's labelled. Yeah. And it feels like what you're saying, although coming from a good place, is very inconsistent.
Yeah.
Would you have still some rules then, but just higher the threshold?
I don't know if you could. That's the problem. I don't know if you could.
So my point is, because you can't, just don't have them.
Yeah.
Because if one family get fined 80 quid, who literally can't afford 80 quid and they're behind in their rent now, or the child didn't get one dinner, that would annoy me more than 5 rich families getting away with going on holiday.
What if they could have just sent their kid into school? So what are the barriers is my question here. So what are the barriers? Why are these kids not going to school?
Mental health, everything we just talked about.
Yeah.
But
they'd be authorised, right?
The fine isn't talking about
mental health wouldn't be, would it?
No, mental health wouldn't be. And SEND, if the things aren't in place for a mainstream school, we see it all the time. If the mainstream don't have the funding, we just talked about it, they're going to be unauthorised absence because the kid doesn't want to come in because it knows that he's going to have the worst time ever in school because there's nothing in there to help him.
So for low-income families, what other barriers are there then to their attendance?
Well, we've got all the ones we talked about.
Because with low-income families, it is higher proportionally. So what is it then?
So everything we talked about is more likely to affect them so far. But there's other things in the cost of living crisis right now. Transport, getting into school. If the car breaks down, you don't have money to fix the car. You can't get into school unless you use public transport. Use public transport, there might be delays.
You might be late to work. You haven't got there's other stuff you can't do.
You need to get into work for certain times like that. The other thing, uniform costs through the roof. If you're in a draconian school, and I know of these schools where they're very, very, very strict on what you've got to wear and where it's got to come from.
Expensive.
It's got to come from this school shop, which by the way we're affiliated with and we take a profit from. Making school, by the way, not free at the point of delivery because you're forcing them to spend hundreds of pounds on uniform, but you've got to get them from this supplier who we work with, and it's got to be a blazer with our badge on it, and it's got to be a jumper with our badge on it,
and a tie.
It's absolute nonsense. So uniform costs, that's one thing that can come in. I think it should be a government. I think it should be a law.
Well, I guess
where schools aren't allowed to have branded things as compulsory. They can have them, but they cannot be compulsory. You should be allowed to go into what's the Florence and Fred in Tesco. You should be allowed to go into George at Asda, get a £3 jumper that's green, and that should be
absolutely fine. Yeah, pick a couple of them up, done. So really, then we can summarise that any cost associated with attending school is obviously a huge part of the reason that low-income families have worse attendance.
Absolutely. And guess what the committee are suggesting?
Go on.
That cost is covered by the government. There is no quick fix to this. Like so much in our society these days, with NHS waiting lists, with GP practices, with schools, there is no fix other than stumping up the money. We've got to stump up the money. We've got to pay for low-income families to get their children into school. If there's any cost incurred from getting your child to school, which is a basic human right, by the way, in education, should be covered, in my opinion, in these instances. Now, devil's advocate right now, because you're good at playing this role in terms of arguing against it. We've just said all what we said. I think we're pretty much on the same page. I know there'll be people out there who are from low-income families whose children go to school every single day. It's a priority. They have that mindset. They're going to get into school. Okay, we're going to get them into school because I'm the parent. I'm going to make sure. And we talked about it at the start. There is some attitudes that are a problem as well. But the low-income family, no attitude problem at all. I'm getting my kid into school, no problem. Okay? why on earth don't I get some tax credit then? Why don't I get some? I'm spending 30 quid a week on getting my kid into school on transport, and I've got them new shoes straight away when the head teacher said they need new shoes. Why is that getting paid for by the person next door?
Yeah. Just
what would be your reply to that?
Well, okay, it's hard, isn't it? Because the opinion there goes down to the classic. Why they're because they're less organised than me, and we're in the same situation. They're getting something that I don't get. It's a tough one. Firstly, I think if that was to come into play, if there was going to be funding, then I think it should just be a blanket actual, an income amount, like a lot of things are in society.
Like every school every kid in school getting free school meals.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, it's under a certain income or pupil premium, whatever. So I do think actually it's just regardless of how organised you are, you do get that funding. Oh, well done, you managed to. You were going to sort it out yourself anyway, but here's the funding because actually we want to support you as a family. Yeah. Being a low income family, it's fine. Maybe they can have you can get a second jumper. So when they lose it, they don't have to go cold for 3 days whilst you find it. Just think, do you know what I mean? Whatever. Yeah. So I think that it shouldn't be an individual basis. Maybe it should just be a straight up threshold for help.
Well, the committee did say before fines are issued, fines should be a last resort. Yeah. So the committee stopped short of saying get rid of fines. Maybe I'm extreme with the view that we shouldn't have any fines at all. Probably what you're saying is maybe more sensible in terms of there has to be something, a deterrent at the end. Yeah. Fine. Yeah. But they're saying, attendance mentor programs are coming in, attendance hubs are coming in.
This is attitude, right?
This is attitude.
So now we think about the attitude. You were saying, and it is true, and it sounds really harsh to say this, and sometimes we're really careful on this podcast, we don't offend anyone, but actually at the end of the day, some people do just have a terrible attitude towards school. They're just not doing the role that they're supposed to be doing very well, and they could be doing it better. Their attitude is not very good towards getting their kid to school. Yeah. That is a thing. Yeah. I'm not afraid to say that. Not afraid to say it.
No, you're right.
But so what we need to do though is not just moan about them. That's a terrible Tory mindset. It's just moan about them and say, well, they should be better like me. Yeah. That's not how it works. Yeah. We should then be doing something. So what you were saying there, I was sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're right.
Start that list again. These are things that...
Well, they're already starting to be rolled out in some places. So attendance mentors programs, you get like a professional to be your mentor. They're the person they go to. Oh, we struggled getting up this morning. I'm gonna talk to Vicky because Vicky's my mentor, and Vicky will talk to me and she'll keep me accountable. Like we've always said with health and stuff, or marketing with our business, having someone who's going to keep you kind of culpable instead of just drop your kids off or run off. I'm going to see. Sorry, they're late again. Having someone who's a mentor, having an attendance hub where you get information and help from someone on how to get your kids to school on time and things like that. That's going to be really important. And the committee say this is working really well where it's rolling out.
Yeah, of course it is. Coaches
so we need it
well.
National. Yeah. We need it to be funded and we need it to be national and targeted to the children who are missing school.
Think about how many rich people have coaches.
Yeah.
Because the system of having someone to help you think through another mind to keep you accountable, to help
I'm
you
your
think
coach.
Through something.
Look how much you've come on.
And I'm your coach. It's crazy. We're just like self-fulfilling prophecy. But yeah, I think this is great. I think this is what we need. But again, it costs money. Yeah. It costs money to have a mentor. It costs money if you're gonna have them. If you imagine you had a member of staff every school whose job from
the family liaison officer.
The family liaison
falls
officer.
on them, doesn't it?
Basically. Yeah. But imagine
every work falls on them.
Yeah, I know it does. That's the problem. So imagine they had a dedicated staff member, or even just they had a dedicated amount of funding and time to get them in, where every morning their sole job is attendance and just keeping those records and dialogues with those families and going and visiting them if they need to. They're not tied down to 7 other jobs like they are right now, where they couldn't possibly do that. But they have this time. Okay, we're going to go and see this family because they're really struggling. That child, maybe there's something undiagnosed here. We don't know yet. They're a bit young, but they're really challenging in the morning, and the family are struggling to get them to school, and quite often they're just giving in because it's upsetting them. They're stressed. They've got to go to work. They get in the nan round. Bang! You got to look. There's these situations where these innocent people who are struggling just need help. So you've got all these layers. You've got poor attitude. You've got genuine people who are just really, really struggling, need the help. You've got people that are just mucking through, but actually still deserve the funding because they're from low-income families. You've got SEN children. You've got children with undiagnosed, unauthorized mental health issues, which should be not unauthorized. They shouldn't be getting fined because of this. They should be getting help. So many layers, and every single one of those layers needs money.
Precisely. You've summed up really well. I think we can add to that list, though, because this is huge. I'm not afraid to say, I come from a background when I was very young. I would be pupil premium. I was free school meals. For a long time when we were very young, it was just my mum, me, my sister. I benefited from a lot of things that I'm really passionate about kids getting today. And one of the biggest things that I remember from primary school, and we've said this a million times on the podcast, is the amount of enrichment that I felt I got. I felt like when I went to school, I loved maths. I was that kid. I loved learning. I'm not the typical person to talk about this, I suppose, because on the classic, like if it is just maths, I was happy. I was there.
Yeah.
But what I remember from primary school is going to London to the Natural History Museum. I remember when we got our own caterpillars each in a little aquarium thing, terrarium maybe it's called, I don't know, the one without water, where we watched our caterpillar turn into a chrysalis and turn into a butterfly.
Yeah.
Unbelievable things. But these vivid memories I have of school are always the enrichment. It's when we got brand new toys on the playground. It's when we got a computer suite in our school.
I bet that made you want to go into school, right?
Yeah, literally. I wanted to go in and see my caterpillar.
Yeah.
It was the best thing ever.
Jumping in on the same points. You know, my memory is terrible.
Yeah.
My memory, for those that haven't been with the podcast for a long time, is like scarily bad. Yeah. I actually don't remember most of my childhood. I just can't remember much.
If we could get a GP appointment, you would.
we can't.
There's no fun.
I just forget. I forget yesterday. I forget everything. Yeah. Anyway, so I don't remember anything.
You've already said this, by the way.
No. But I tell you what, I do remember. I remember when I was in year 4 and we had this.
What you were going to forget?
No. And we had, I was trying to think of the year group I was in. I was definitely a bit younger than year 6. Year 4, and we had this guy came in to do a science workshop, and we got to, it was like lab equipment, and it felt so cool. We were making little potions, and like we were learning to tap them to allow like to knock the mixture around so the smell came out, so we could get a whiff without like putting our nose in. All these little silly little things. I remember that. I also remember every single year when we had like a drama group come in and they actually made like a proper setup in our little school hall.
And you did drama GCSE. I did drama GCSE.
Yeah. I remember all that. I remember that stuff. I remember the Christmas parties because they were fun. These are all like things I can tell you what, I cannot remember a single lesson I ever learned other than the ones that were really fun, like making a booklet about World War II.
And again, we know that the lessons you don't remember, you still learn stuff. That's
of course.
But the point we're making,
they weren't the reason I was coming to
exactly.
Yeah.
And this is the point we're making here. The enrichment is so important to keep children engaged, to keep them wanting to come in. They're children at the end of the day. Just think about it for a minute.
I had a kid a couple of years ago. This is the perfect example of this. A couple of years ago, severely absent. So it would fall into that category, severe absence, and was off, honestly, for about 4 weeks. And then we had an enrichment activity planned for the afternoon of one day. Guess when they came in? Yeah. Specifically for the didn't even come in for the morning of that day. They only came in, and they were well enough, completely fine. Yeah. Came in for the afternoon of that day. Yeah. Really difficult child with extremely challenging behaviour at home. Yeah. Family really, really struggled to get this child in. Yeah. Exact pinnacle situation there where it's like, cool, that kid would have been at school for 4 weeks if there was like a liaison officer to help them. Yes. Enrichment at school and someone to go and help them at home. Yeah. But no, they missed 4 weeks of school.
So the point of us talking about this is that there's stats behind this. In the last decade, £1 billion less has been spent or provided as funding to schools. 1 billion in the last decade, ignore inflation, 1 billion less. If it was the same, it would still be less because of inflation. Yeah. Has been spent on enrichment activities in school. We're talking arts, music, the things like drama, the things that children love doing, that engage children the most, that we've just wiped out. It's not a Tory mindset. Maths, you do column addition. Can you read? Do you know what a fronted adverbial is? No, sorry, you're not going to pretend to be a Roman Viking for a day. Excuse me, can you add 4 and 7?
Is that science lab thing, whatever that is, going to help us beat the Chinese in the league tables? Yeah. It's like, do we really care about that? Come on.
So if you're a child, right, who cares? That's all right. I'm only missing arithmetic practice and reading this text that I've got no interest in. I love art. I love drawing things. I love making things. We're not doing that for 6 weeks. Oh, all right. Well, I can't be bothered then. Yeah, it all feeds in. And guess what? Low-income families are the ones where school is the only opportunity to do these things. They imagine loving art. Imagine loving drawing. You used to love drawing when you were younger. Okay? Drawing's, thankfully, quite a cheap thing to be able to do. Imagine someone came in and showed you sculpting. Yeah. Oh, what? I don't get the chance to do this at home. Yeah. If you're in a low-income family, the only enrichment you get is the stuff you get through school. And it's just being squeezed and squeezed and squoze. Okay?
It's been squozen to death.
It's been squozen to death. Yeah. And I think that's another string to the bow as to why children aren't coming into school. They need enrichment. They are little children.
Does it cost money?
It costs money.
It costs money to not spend £1 billion less. It's a lot of money, guys. You felt it. I know you have. I know every teacher watching this right now will. If you've been teaching for more than 2 years, you probably know. Yeah, even in my time as a teacher, I have seen those enrichment activities disappear. Unless you work at a school who's really passionate about these things and they go out of their way to fight the trend and do it. Because I have heard of some schools that do that, but it often comes at the detriment.
Yeah, they cut something
of the things. They've got to cut something else. They don't really have the money to do it. They're finding the money in different ways, and it's just that's not how it should be.
Yeah.
It should be funded.
So there was basically one finding in this committee where we can finish on this, because
which was get your kids to school.
It was get your kids to school. But I think, to summarize before we go into the last one, less finger pointing, because even when it's the fault of the parent, even when you exhaust all options and they just need to buck their ideas up and get their children into school, pointing the finger will still do nothing. So it's a process where there's going to be lots of slow gains, hopefully, over the next few years. But it's only going to happen, like with a lot of things in education, if we stop pretending that we can just put a plaster over it. We can't put a blue paper towel on it. It's not going to fix itself. It needs huge amounts of funding. And this was just hilarious to me, because it's going to go into the wider context now. The biggest thing they said from the committee that would have the most impact on combating low-income families not getting their children to school is to properly tackle child poverty. And the idea that after 14 years of conservative government and austerity, that the disparity is bigger than ever, and we have millions of children in this country, the United Kingdom, we have millions of children living in poverty, is disgusting to me. I can't believe it's not the number one thing that we're sorting out. I don't care if you earn 80 or 100 grand or more a year and you're scared that people are going to come for your taxes. You need to get over yourself. Because there are people living on 12 grand a year maximum,
not sending their children to school,
kids to school, and that cycle is going to continue, because unless we break that cycle, there's no social mobility. They're not going to. If we're going to just make them out to be the villains of our society because they're leeches and they're not putting anything in, this cycle will go on forever. No, these are very normal people, and until you experience it and you see it for what it is, which are just children struggling and parents struggling, single parents sometimes on one income, who can't afford anything. If you think the answer is to point at them and blame them and say, here's 80 quid fine, you need to buck your ideas up, because that is absolutely ridiculous to me.
Sounds like he's getting serious over here.
It's ridiculous.
But thank you for listening, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode, because it has been really fun. It's been really fun for us as well. Just to get our teeth stuck into this. It's certainly just the research process of this episode and talking about it has really, really changed my mindset. And I think I'll think twice the next time a kid's persistently absent, of me being, for God's sake, just get your kid in school. Do you know what? There's 12 other factors I should consider about why this isn't happening. And pointing the finger just isn't the answer.
Absolutely. Hayden, thank you. Guys, please do find us on Instagram, Teach Sleep Repeat Podcast. And if you've got this far, surely we're worth a bit of a review, We don't do sponsors.
Maybe even a full review.
Yeah, maybe like a 5 stars on Spotify. But if you have Apple Podcasts, it'll be really good if they give us a 5-star review and write a little paragraph.
Unless they're toxic SLT. Because then we might get a 1-star. That's happened before. So we don't want that.
No. Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for listening. And this is definitely something, as always, that we'd love to hear your thoughts on. Let us know. Find us on Instagram, as always. And see you next time.
Goodbye.